While a majority of the talk surrounding PS5 and Xbox Series X has revolved around power, talking about the speed of SSDs and teraflops, that's certainly not the only card to be played next generation, and there's one feature where Microsoft said that they were going to battle toe-to-toe with PlayStation.
This is hardware built specifically to lead the console industry into true 4K gaming and high-fidelity VR.
But ultimately forfeited, with Phil Spencer later saying that nobody is asking for VR, and a lot of it comes down to how much money they can make, saying that no one is selling millions and millions of VR headsets. Fast forward to January 2020 and Sony announced PlayStation has in fact sold millions and millions, if technically millions is plural and two is plural, so you have two and then you have another one. So they announced that they sold 5 million VR headsets, and while that number is beginning to slow due to the age of the console, and while it's millions of units compared to the number of actual PS4s out there, it's still a relatively small number. But it doesn't look like that's stopping Sony from doubling down on PlayStation VR and investing quite a lot into new technology that some of this could actually turn around and make VR go from niche to mainstream. And so it's almost guaranteed that Sony is definitely going to have a sequel to the PlayStation VR. And over the last several weeks and months, a number of patents have started to come out to light, showing off some of this technology that they're investing in. And while patents don't mean that we'll see it in product, they at least point to dedication to the technology and a lot of money invested with research and development. And again, some of these new patents could turn around and change things for the VR community. So let's begin with one of the features that I think is one of the most promising, and that is finger tracking. A few weeks ago, Sony posted a patent and paper as well as a prototype video showing off new finger tracking capabilities. And what's cool about this is that it doesn't require a camera to watch your hands in order to determine how you're holding or what you're doing with your fingers. They captured several data points using multiple gestures to figure out the likely position your hand would be in based on how you're holding the joystick. And the end result allows users to be able to manipulate objects in space using pretty natural gestures. And I think this solves one of the biggest issues with VR. I mean, there's a couple. They've nailed down the natural feeling of being able to look around and the visuals of it. Of course, the visuals can always get better, but I'm just talking about like the natural head motion. You turn to the right and you look to the right. But being able to manipulate objects in game is still very unnatural with most of these devices and controllers that are out there on the market right now. And so if you can make it simple, yet still feel very natural, being able to manipulate objects in a virtual space, I think that would do big things, and this technology I think looks really good. Now keep in mind this video is simply a prototype, so don't pay attention to the bulkiness of it and everything. Of course things like that would get smaller, and in fact there's several patent photos that go along with this that show much smaller devices being used. So here is a smaller style handheld joystick that can seemingly replicate what we see happening in the video. There's another patent photo that shows a PlayStation Move controller that's very similar to what's out there currently, but it has a lot more sensors, again for finger tracking. And then finally, this is my favorite because I think this makes the most sense, a glove. And I think the glove is the best idea because then you could even incorporate different sensors within it that could vibrate and give you the sensation like you're actually touching something. And I would compare it to the same way that controllers are constantly vibrating in order to allow you to feel different environments, and those controllers are getting better with that technology. And so if you were able to replicate that in your hand in a glove, I think that would be a game changer right there. Another patent that has been dug up recently is facial tracking features, which would allow you to be able to see live and accurate facial animations of a person that you're in a room with. Now, a lot of phones can already do this. Like iPhone has that, I think it's called Me Emoji or something like that, where you can interact with the camera and it's capturing that and changing it to, an avatar that's mimicking that. And so this would be, of course, useful in a virtual space, especially if you're with multiple people, and it would give you the sensation that you're really with other people if you can see their true emotions and it's not just some blank face that we see today in games. And the patent even mentions being able to scan in part of your nose so that you would see part of your nose in game, which sounds a little bit weird, but what they say is the reasoning for this is that it would give you even more immersion and feel like you're actually in that virtual setting, because if you have a nose, then chances are you can see part of your nose in real life wherever it is that you're looking. You don't notice it and you don't look at it a lot, but it's still there. And so they say that this would really add to the immersion aspect because it can scan in your nose and then actually implement that same profile in the game. And so those are all cool, but there remains one big barrier when it comes to VR and feeling like you're truly in the world, and that is movement. And with PSVR, you still needed a handheld joystick in order to move around the environment. But movement could also be seeing a big update with the PlayStation VR 2. A new patent shows that Sony's been working on a way that would allow you to walk around the room with the VR headset on, and that movement would be translated in-game. Now, this feature would require that a camera be set up and it be able to see the boundaries of the room, as well as keeping the headset in view so it knew where you were. And now, I still have a lot of questions about how this could potentially work, because if you're in a game and there's, a really long distance to walk, do I walk 1 foot and then all of a sudden I've ran to, the end of the road or something? Like, for me, it's hard to kind of see how they're going to implement this, but it does look like something that they are working on, and I'm interested in seeing how they could pull this off potentially, especially like in a tighter room. But still interesting that this could potentially work, and it could work alongside with another patent that has been showed, which is eye tracking, which can have multiple uses in VR. So they may be able to tell where it is that you're looking, and if you start walking, then you go to that particular location. I don't know, but again, another patent, eye tracking. There's also a patent that shows multiple users in the same VR space. So you add all this together, the things that we've mentioned before, talking about the facial animations and stuff, being able to view somebody and their actual gestures with their hand. So it's kind of pulling all this together with this particular patent. And if this goes, forward like this, I'll go ahead and call it now. Somebody's going to get married in VR if they haven't already, or at least they're going to propose in VR. And so I'm sure that's an article that we will read eventually if it's not already out there. So the bottom line is this: Sony has more up its sleeves, and with the recent success of Half-Life VR and all the research and development going into this, as well as other platforms, you can be sure that VR, unlike other fads, isn't going anywhere. It's certainly not mainstream, so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying everybody's going to run out and get VR headsets tomorrow, but it is steadily growing. And it's going to continue to get better with time. And as these companies figure out how to make this all feel more real, it's eventually going to get there. And when it does, I think it's going to blow up. And so PlayStation VR 2 could be a sleeper feature that people may not even realize they want at this point. And right now, as far as consoles are concerned, it'll be another exclusive for the PlayStation. Post below, do you think these features could turn more people into VR? And does having a VR option give Sony an added benefit? And would you like to see VR headsets come to Xbox in the future? Post your thoughts down below. That does it for me, the Red Dragon. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.